I didn't come to the farmhouse looking for ghosts, only answers. The lawyer's voice still rattled in my head like loose change. The will is missing, must have been misplaced. People don't misplace the last words of a life. They hide them or they burn them. The rain had stopped, leaving the yard rinsed clean and the chimney smell sharp. I unlocked the back door and stepped into the kitchen where the clock died the night Dad did. The fireplace sits between the dining room and the parlor, bricks darkened by winters. We burned pecan and oak there. Ash waited in the grate, soft as a confession. I shoveled it into a bucket, sifted for anything stubborn. Nothing. I wiped my hands on my jeans and leaned close to the firebox walls. One brick near the bottom looked wrong, warmed uneven, a crescent of soot like a fingerprint. The brick wobbled under my thumb. I wedged my pocket knife into the seam and pried until the mortar sighed. Behind it, a shallow cavity, a cache the size of an old letter. Inside lay an envelope seared at the edges, brittle as autumn leaves. The flap had fused shut. The writing on the front had bled into a brown blur, but I could still recognize the loop of my father's T. I set it on the dining table and listened for a while to the house settle, to wind slipping under eaves, to a sparrow scuffling in the flue. Smoke stains crossed the envelope like veins. I didn't rush. Heat can turn paper to lace. Impatience turns it to nothing. With a butter knife and breath held shallow, I teased open the flap. A thin sheet slid free. Charred corners, words intact in the center, waiting to speak where fire had failed. The paper smelled faintly of wet ash and old tobacco, like Dad had sealed a season inside it. I read the first lines twice so they would not slip away. He wrote in his workman's print, slow and square, "If this reaches you," I did not get the chance to say it out loud. "The will is not lost." I placed a copy with the clerk and another with Pastor Reed. "What you find here is the reason I hid it." Under the words sat a list of dates and short notes that were more map than memory. August 10th, Bennett came by after dark. September 3rd, bank called about renewal. October 1st, fire in the parlor, only the brick warmed. The last entry was a sentence that leaned to the right as if it were running. "If someone says the will is gone, check the things that don't move." I laid the sheet flat and held it to the window light. Heat had ghosted a second layer of writing beneath the first, faint as breath on glass. I angled the page and saw names: the clerk, the pastor, and one more I didn't expect. Marta, my aunt who left the county 15 years ago. A phone number followed, smudged but readable. I set the letter down and felt the room listen. If the lawyer had lied, he wasn't acting alone. I took Dad's old rotary from the wall, dialed the clerk's office, and asked for records on file. The receptionist hesitated, paper rustling like wings, then said the archive was temporarily inaccessible due to fumigation. It sounded like a story made while someone watched. I wrote the numbers on the envelope rim, grabbed my jacket and headed for town before the excuses dried. Rain threatened again. Town looked scrubbed by rain, but faces still weren't clean. I parked by the courthouse and walked to the clerk's office, the bell giving a chirp. June sat behind the stamp window, eyes flicking to the back room before they met mine. I asked for my father's probate file. She said evenly that public records were closed for fumigation, 2 words that smelled like lighter fluid. I thanked her and didn't leave. I used the payphone in the hallway and called the pastor. He sounded surprised to hear my name, then relieved. "Your dad left a sealed envelope with me," he said. "I locked it in the sacristy cabinet. Came in yesterday and the lock was broken. Nothing else touched." I asked if he'd filed a report. He hadn't. He was ashamed he hadn't noticed sooner. I wrote it down, then dialed the number next to my aunt's name. Marta answered on the 3rd ring, voice like gravel warmed. She'd moved 2 states over to marry a mechanic, then stayed for peace. When I said Dad's name, she went quiet. He called me in October, she said, asked if I could keep a copy of a paper for a while. I said yes. It arrived a week later. 2 men came to the shop the next day asking about it. What did you do? I asked. She exhaled. I mailed it back to him, certified. He said to address it to the farmhouse, attention to the fireplace. The hallway felt tight as a coat 2 sizes small. I thanked her and hung up. The word fumigation kept rattling. I looked through the glass at June. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Before I left, she slid a yellow sticky across the counter, face blank. Come back at closing today. Alone. I waited in the truck outside the clerk's office until shadows pulled long across Main Street. At closing, June turned the sign, killed lights, and cracked the door. 5 minutes, she whispered. Inside smelled of toner and dust. She led me past the counter down a narrow aisle of cabinets that groaned when slid. She stopped at a drawer labeled probate, T. The folder for my father's name was gone, but an empty hanging tab remained, its plastic sleeve pale where paper should be. June slipped me a photocopy receipt dated 2 weeks ago, the signature scribbled hard. H. Crail. The name belonged to our lawyer. He signed out the file after hours, she said. Returned nothing. My chest felt full of wire. Why tell me? I asked. She looked toward the back room. Because your dad helped my boy one summer when he couldn't find work. Said a man is worth more than his dry season. She handed me another slip, an internal log showing a redacted entry the same night the sacristy lock broke. We moved to microfilm station. She threaded a reel and spun to October. There it was, a recorded notice of will, stamped, received, time-stamped 8:07 p.m., Clark initials Jr. That's me, she said. We scanned it. But the image is corrupted now, like heat through glass. She printed the header and folded it into my palm. Chain of custody, she said. They can erase copies, not timestamps. Footsteps sounded. A key rattled. June shoved the drawer, killed the screen, and pushed me through the side exit to alley light. Go, she said. Don't call. Bring this to someone who still believes paper matters. I slid into the truck, heart drumming, pointed home, where a fireplace waited to tell the rest. Dusk found me back at the farmhouse with the photocopy header in my wallet and June's warning in my ears. The fireplace waited like a throat that had swallowed too much. I laid a tarp on the rug, set a lamp close, and pulled more bricks, starting low where the scorch curled darkest. Mortar flaked. Behind the second row, I found a hollow, larger than the first, lined with tin flashing, heat-blued and wavy. Inside lay crumbs of paper fused into black petals, and beneath them, a stiff grey sheet the size of a will. Carbon paper, the kind you press and forget until it remembers for you. I slid it out with a spatula and pinned it under glass from a picture frame. The carbon shimmered. I sharpened a carpenter's pencil and shaded gently across a clean page laid over it. Slow passes, light as wind. Letters rose. Last will and testament of Thomas E. Rourke. Then lines, clauses, witness blocks. Names bled up. Read June's initials. And there, pressed deepest, a signature printed hard enough to dent brick, Harlan Crail. My hand steadied. Dad had made copies the old way, counting on fire to kill ink, but not pressure. I lifted the glass and angled the lamp until the impressions read clearer. Bequests surfaced. Mom keeps the house and 10 acres. The south pasture held in trust until my debt is settled. Remainder divided between my children. I stared at the plural until my throat closed. Children. He had written me back into the land, even as he hid the paper. Rain began. I slid the carbon between 2 sheets of wax paper, packed the cavity with broken bricks, and washed my hands until ash thinned. Tomorrow, I'd take the carbon to the judge. Tonight, I would keep watch. Morning came edged with the metallic smell that follows rain, a brightness that makes every lie look thinner. I brewed coffee, tucked the carbon packet into a manila folder, and slipped Dad's pocket knife into my jeans. Mom watched from the doorway, arms folded against a chill I couldn't fix. I told her I'd stop by Pastor Reed's, then the courthouse. She nodded once, the way people do when they decide to worry in silence. The road to town ran clean, puddles flashing sky. At the parsonage, Reed opened the door before I knocked. His eyes dropped to the folder as if Faith could read paper. I laid the carbon under his desk lamp and showed him the raised names, the witness block, the bruise of Crail's signature pressed like a boot heel. He swallowed. He wrote a statement on church letterhead confirming custody and the break-in. He signed without shaking. Outside, the bell tower tolled the hour. I crossed to the sheriff's office with the same slow steadiness Dad used for gates. The deputy on duty, Morales, had baled hay with me in school summers. I told him about the photocopy log, the sacristy lock, the clerk's warning, and the carbon. He read quietly, then made 3 copies, sealed them, and logged them into evidence. No speeches, only a nod that said weight had shifted. On Main Street, Harlan Crail stepped from a diner, phone at his ear, jaw tight. He froze when he saw the envelope in my hands. I kept walking. He started toward me, then stopped, measuring something only he could see. I didn't give him time to choose. I crossed to the courthouse, climbed the steps slick with new rain, and pushed through the heavy door toward a judge who still believed paper mattered that day. The judge's chambers smelled of lemon oil and paper, a quiet that required patience to speak. I handed the clerk the folder and waited as she carried it inside. When the door reopened, Judge Whitlow motioned me forward. I laid the carbon beneath the desk lamp and explained the fireplace, the broken sacristy lock, the clerk's after-hours sign-out, and the corrupted microfilm image. He listened with the careful stillness I'd seen in men reading weather off distant hills. He asked for corroboration. I offered Reed's letter, Morales's evidence log, and June's timestamp printout. The judge examined the impressions by tilting the glass like a compass. "Pressure writing," he said softly. "Fire can't erase what a pen carves." He rang for a stenographer, then called the clerk's office on speaker. June confirmed the receipt number and initials. When Whitlow phoned Crail, the line rang long. The lawyer answered and denied removing the file. The judge told him to appear by afternoon. I stepped into the hallway and watched rain streak the courthouse window like lines on a ledger. In the lobby, Bennett paced with a folded umbrella, pretending not to wait. He glanced at the folder under my arm and looked away too quickly. Somewhere, a photocopier warmed, a throat about to clear. Back inside, Whitlow reconvened. Crail arrived damp and irritated. The judge placed the carbon on a light table and read aloud the will's key clauses, including the bequest to my mother, the trust on the south pasture, and the remainder to the children. With each clause, Bennett's shoulders settled into stone. Whitlow ordered the estate reopened, the carbon secured as provisional copy, and subpoenas issued for additional records. Walking out, I felt the building lighter, as if truth had opened a window no storm could close. That afternoon I drove back to the farm by the slow road, letting the fields rinse courthouse air from my lungs. The sky had cleared to a pale steel, and puddles kept suns for anyone willing to look down. I parked by the porch and set the folder on the kitchen table, then walked to the fireplace as if it were a witness still under oath. I replaced the bricks I had loosened, pressing mortar smooth with a putty knife. I wanted the wall to look ordinary again, truthful in its quiet. While it dried, I brewed coffee and opened Dad's tool chest. At the bottom lay a carpenter's awl polished by years. I remembered him teaching me to sign wood without ink, just pressure and patience, so rainfall could never wash it away. I took the awl, and inside the clean cover of a ledger, pressed a note for myself. Keep copies scattered, keep names together, don't let fire decide. It calmed me. Outside, tires hissed on wet gravel. Bennett's blue truck idled at the gate, rolled on. He was measuring time, not distance. Mom came in from the garden with her gloves tucked in a pocket. I told her the judge's orders, the reopened estate, the subpoenas. Tears filled and fell before she could stop them. She wiped her face on her sleeve and touched the hearthstones as checking a fever. "Your father would have liked the way you hold a line," she said. Near dusk, Morales called. The evidence room had flagged a match. Crail's office shred bin contained crinkled carbon scraps consistent with our sheet. Chain of custody was intact. He would deliver a report by morning. I hung Dad's jacket on its nail. For the first time, the house breathed like a house again. Morning broke bright and brittle, the kind of light that makes lies squint. Morales arrived just after 8, cruiser ticking as it cooled. He stepped onto the porch carrying an evidence pouch and a steadiness I could lean on. Inside, he photographed the hearth, the cavity, the replaced bricks. I pointed out the tin flashing and where the soot curled darkest. He nodded, then set a recorder on the mantel and asked me to walk through everything once more. I did, slow as fence work. We drove to town together. At the station, he briefed the sheriff, who signed a warrant for Crail's office and records. Word moved faster than tires. When we pulled up to the law building, the blinds were already tilted like wary eyes. Crail stood in his doorway smoothing a tie he hadn't learned to trust. Morales read the warrant. Paper filled the room like weather. They boxed files while I waited in the hall counting breaths. June arrived with a sealed envelope and placed it in Morales's hands. "Anonymous drop at our night slot," she said. Inside was a micro SD card and a note. "Backup. Scan before it disappears." The tech plugged it into a laptop. Up came the clerk's imaging software, and then the frame we'd all been chasing. My father's will, crisp as frost. Each page, each clause, each signature, scanned months ago and quietly filed to nothing. Bennett appeared at the end of the corridor, pretending he'd arrived by accident. His gaze bounced from the screen to the warrant to my face. The math finally reached him. He pivoted away, but the judge's clerk stepped from an elevator with subpoenas like fence posts. By noon, copies sat in 3 places: court, sheriff, me. Paper had weight again, so did my father's name. I drove home with the copies seat-belted beside me like passengers refusing to speak. The fields lay flattened clean after rain, fences shining as if light were wired through every staple. At the farmhouse, I set the folder on the table and stood in the parlor doorway, watching the fireplace pretend innocence. The scorched brick no longer felt like a wound. It felt like testimony that outlived heat. Mom moved quietly around the kitchen, cupboards opening and closing with the rhythm of someone relearning a room. I told her the scans had surfaced, that the judge had them, that 3 copies now existed where yesterday there were none. She sat, the exhaustion of relief settling into her shoulders like a shawl. We didn't celebrate. We brewed coffee and cleaned tools, the way farmers honor news, by making it practical. Near noon, a sedan eased up the drive. Not Bennett's truck, county plates. The judge's clerk stepped out holding a sealed envelope and a gravity that turned air heavy. Inside was a notice. An emergency hearing scheduled for tomorrow morning, orders to produce all originals, and a temporary hold on any estate transfers made under Crail's direction. The language was dry, but I could taste rain in it. After the clerk left, I walked the perimeter of the house, touching windows, checking latches, tracing the edges of the life Dad had built. In the mudroom, I found his old ledger where he'd pressed notes with an awl. I added my line beneath his. Truth kept in multiples, mercy kept in motion, evening set down soft. I split kindling and built a small fire, not to hide anything, but to learn the heat that nearly erased us. Flame licked brick, then settled, quiet as a promise we intended to keep. The courthouse smelled of rain-soaked paper and hallway dust when we walked in the next morning. Mom sat beside me in the front row, hands folded over a handkerchief that had already done its work. Judge Whitlow entered, spectacles gleaming under the skylight. Morales stood near the door with a sealed evidence pouch, and across the aisle, Crail looked smaller than his suit. Bennett wasn't there. He'd slipped out of the story when the lies stopped paying. The judge called the session to order. He reviewed the chain of custody, the microfilm images, and the recovered carbon copy. Each document found its voice again, the ink and pressure and timestamp singing the same tune. When he finished reading, silence carried more weight than argument. He ruled that the will be restored in full, reinstating every clause exactly as written. My mother retained the homestead. The remaining acreage would transfer to my name upon final certification. Crail faced formal charges for tampering with evidence and obstruction. Whitlow's gavel landed once, decisive, final, clean. Outside, the sky opened, sunlight washing the courthouse steps like absolution. Mum took my arm as we descended. He'd be proud, she said, voice shaking. He already is, I told her, and meant it. Back at the farm, I knelt by the fireplace and slid one of the certified copies into the same hidden cavity behind the bricks. Not out of fear, but as tradition. Some truths deserve a home in the walls that witnessed them. That night, the house breathed evenly. The wind moved through pecan leaves with the sound of turning pages. I sat at the table where the first letter had burned, wrote one of my own, and tucked it into the mantle. For whoever comes next, fire can destroy a will, but not a promise. Thank you for listening to this story. If it moved you, tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Morning settled over the fields like clean linen on a line, snapping softly in a friendly breeze. With the order signed, the farm felt different, lighter, as if the porch boards had exhaled. I made coffee and walked the fence with a mug warming my hands. Every post I passed sounded like a note struck true. When I reached the south gate, a county car turned in. Morales stepped out, hat in hand, the evidence pouch replaced by an easy grin. "Paperwork's filed," he said. "Crail's cooperating now that the lights are on." He handed me a copy of the final certification, embossed seal catching sun. It felt heavier than steel and kinder than rain. Mum came from the garden, wiping soil from her palms, and we stood there a while, three people listening to wind through cottonwoods, as if it were a hymn that finally remembered its words. After lunch, neighbors drifted by not for gossip but to work. Pete brought a post-hole digger, Lila a pan of cornbread, the Cummings kids their laughter. We set new braces on the back corner and mended wire where winter had chewed. No speeches were given. Hands simply learned the job again. When we finished, I took the scorched envelope from the mantel and buried it under the big pecan where Dad liked to read almanacs. Fire had tried to tell our story. Soil would finish it. Near evening, Aunt Marta called. She'd heard. Her voice traveled 2 states on a warm current. "Your father trusted you to find what he couldn't say," she told me. "I'm proud of both of you." After we hung up, I wrote a line in the ledger with the awl. "Keep faith, keep copies, keep walking." The porch light came on by itself, right on time. That night, the farm was quiet in a way I hadn't heard since before the lawyer's first call. The air smelled of rain and turned soil. I sat by the fireplace, flames low, watching their light breathe across the bricks that had once hidden so much. The new copy of the will rested in a wooden frame on the mantel. Paper, seal and truth, side by side with Dad's photograph. I read his letter again, the one that had survived smoke and silence. The edges had gone soft, words faint as a whisper. "If you're reading this, I trust you'll know what to keep and what to let go." For the first time, I understood. It wasn't about land or inheritance. It was about carrying the weight only long enough to set it down clean. Mum came in, hair undone from the day's wind, and leaned against the doorframe. "You think he can rest now?" she asked. I smiled. "Yeah," I said. "I think we all can." Outside, coyotes sang somewhere past the creek, their voices wild but not lonely. I stepped onto the porch and let the night wrap around me. Every sound, the hum of crickets, the slow swing of the barn door, felt like a language I finally spoke. I took one of the certified copies, sealed it in a new envelope, and tucked it into the same wall cavity where the scorched one had lived, not as evidence, as remembrance. Then I closed the brick gently, leaving it just slightly loose so air and truth could pass through. Tomorrow the farm would wake like always, fences to mend, fields to check, life to keep living. But tonight the story was whole again, rescued from fire, rebuilt in quiet hands. Thank you for listening to this story. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.